Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of my opinions about classical music. If you are a new viewer, welcome. I hope you want to subscribe. We are getting so close to 100 subscribers right now, and I'm so excited about that. And if you're an old viewer, welcome back. I'm so happy you keep coming back here. You've probably seen the title already, but today we are talking about the pitched percussion section. And if you haven't seen the unpitched percussion section video already, I'll put a link up on the screen right now. And there I also explain why I have divided the unpitched percussion section and the pitched percussion section. So check that out. But as you can imagine, there are so many pitched percussion instruments, like I cannot even begin to mention all of them. So instead I made a list of 6 instruments that I will be talking about today. Those 6 instruments are the timpani, marimba, vibraphone, xylophone, chimes or tubular bells, and glockenspiel. So let's just start from the top of that list with the OG pitched percussion instrument. It's the timpani. The timpani was actually, to my knowledge, the first pitched percussion instrument in the orchestra. To summarize the timpani real quick, it's basically just a bunch of big drums that you can tune. The thing I like the most about the timpani is the fact that you can use the Super Bowl on it, and it sounds so cool. What I like the least about the timpani though is the fact that you actually need some time to tune the drums. You at most have like 6 pitches at the same time. Most have only 4, and some even only have 2 pitches at the same time, and then you have to tune for like 30 minutes. Okay, maybe not 30 minutes, but at least for a little while. The timpani would be so much cooler if it was somehow possible to have all 12 tones of the chromatic scale at the same time, honestly. It would be so much more practical to write for, it would be so much cooler. Imagine all the cool music you could do with that. As far as I've understood though, the timpanis are kinda expensive, so I guess that's part of the reason why you can't really have all 12 tones. And I suppose that's understandable. Let's move on to the next one. We have the marimba. The marimba comes from Africa, but the modern marimba was developed in Mexico, and it's really only recently that we started using it in the orchestra. If you own an iPhone, you've heard the marimba sound before, but if you don't know what it sounds like, let me just tell you right now. It sounds amazing. The only downside I can think of about the marimba is that it doesn't really have much sustain, so you get the attack, which sounds great, but you don't really have much tone after the attack. Of course, the lower tones sustain longer than the higher tones, but I really like the sound of the sustained notes, and the marimba just not giving me that. So let's talk about an instrument that does give me that instead. We have the vibraphone. The vibraphone is basically a metal marimba, but the most fun thing about the vibraphone is that it has a motor in it. And now you're probably thinking, why on earth would a percussion instrument need a motor? And I get it, I also asked that question when I learned about the motor in the vibraphone. So basically how it works is, you hit the note on the vibraphone with the sustain pedal down, and it's kind of boring because it just sounds. But if you have the motor on, it starts kind of a spinning thing inside the vibraphone, which gives it vibrato. And if you have a really cool vibraphone, you can even adjust the speed of this vibrato. And I mean, how cool isn't that? You can have vibrato on a percussion instrument. And on top of that, you can use the Super Bowl on the vibraphone. And that also sounds kinda cool, so... But okay, let's move on to the xylophone, the instrument that was named only for us to have a word starting with the letter X. This xylophone has even more of a sustain problem than the marimba, so it's basically just attack with some pitch. In many ways it's just a higher pitched marimba, basically. So instead of talking about the marimba again, let's move on to the tubular bells or chimes. This is basically the instrument that sounds the most like church bells in the orchestra. It's kind of a two-sided instrument because it's either used for like super dramatic stuff or it's related to Christmas because it sounds like church bells. Right now, I can think of at least 3 different pieces of Christmas music that uses the tubular bells. And most of the time, it's starting on the top of a major scale and just playing all the pitches all the way down. That's basically all it's used for in the Christmas music. In general, I do like the tubular bells. I like the sustain and the sound and everything. The only issue I have with the tubular bells though is that every time I try to talk to a percussionist about the tubular bells, they're like, oh, I don't like playing it because I can't really watch the conductor and the sheet music and where to hit on the tubular bells. Like, isn't that what you practice for? Maybe I just don't understand. I don't know. But yeah, let's move on. We're finally getting to the last instrument on this list, and it is the glockenspiel. The glockenspiel is basically a super high-pitched vibraphone in a way, but it doesn't have a motor, so it's less cool. The glockenspiel is super duper high-pitched, like you think it's not that high-pitched, because you see the sheet music, it's like inside the lines, it's super nice, but then you remember that it's written 2 octaves below what it sounds like. Like, we're way up there with the piccolos. Though the glockenspiel is in tune, while the piccolo probably isn't. I definitely don't mind the glockenspiel at all. It's definitely useful for sounding more than all of the other musicians in the orchestra, except the piccolos. And it just has this magical fairy vibe. And that seems to be everything, so let's go into the ranking. In first place, we have the Vibraphone with its wonderful motor. I mean, if you don't have a motor, you can't compete. In second place, we have the OG pitched percussion instrument. It is the timpani. Third place, of course I couldn't let the glockenspiel get any lower. It's basically a small vibraphone. In fourth place, we have the sound of Christmas music. We have Tubular Bells. In fifth place, with only a slight lack of sustain, we find the wonderful Marimba. And that leaves, of course, the xylophone in last place, and that's simply because it cannot compete with the sustain of the other instruments. And would you look at that, that's everything for today. I am so happy you watched through all of it, thank you so much. I would be really happy if you could let me know what's your favorite pitched percussion instrument. And if it's not the vibraphone, you're clearly wrong. And for next time, I'm going to talk about some instruments that's normally not in the orchestra. So if you have a favorite instrument that's not normally in the orchestra, do leave it in a comment down below, and maybe I'll include it in the next video. Thank you again for watching all of this, and I'll see you next time.